This is the Gauntlet Podcast. My name is Jason.
Hi, I'm Michael.
I'm Lowell.
And I'm Rich.
Michael, welcome to the Gauntlet Podcast.
Yeah, super excited to be on the show.
So we are talking about Gauntlet Hangouts. We're going to do a little bit of reflecting on Gauntlet Hangouts 2017. And I thought it would be fun to have the four of us on for this because I think we're the most active GMs on Gauntlet Hangouts. We run probably the most games of everybody. And so we are going to talk about just sort of generally our feelings about how this year went on Gauntlet Hangouts. We're going to talk about some highlights in terms of just favorite games and favorite sessions and things like that. And then we're going to talk about things we're looking forward to for next year. But before we begin that, I think it would be helpful to just say what Gauntlet Hangouts is, since there might be people listening who don't know what it is, right? Gauntlet Hangouts is the Gauntlet's online gaming calendar. We organize and schedule everything through a custom website, and then we announce those games on our Slack and on G+. Gauntlet Patreon supporters at the $7 level get 1 week of RSVP priority, but then after that, they open up to everyone. It's a big calendar. In November, I did some counting. In November, we had 48 events, 48 sessions, and that's actually pretty light because of Thanksgiving. We typically hit around the 50 to 60 mark at this point. So very, very active. Variety of games and types, mostly indie story powered by the Apocalypse games, but a fair amount of OSR and trad stuff too. We do one-shots and long-term campaigns, but mostly shorter-term campaigns of like 2, 3, 4 sessions each, right? And almost entirely open table. That's a big sort of principle of Gauntlet Hangouts. Like the games are almost entirely open table. There are a couple of little caveats there, but for the most part, if there's space in a game, space in a session, you can join. No previous experience required. Rich. So Rich, you and I were there at the beginning of Gauntlet Hangouts when Gauntlet Hangouts was just the games you and I were running and the few people playing with us.
Yeah. Oh man, old school.
Like, what do you think? Just kind of generally speaking, we've never really had an episode about Gauntlet Hangouts. Like, how do you think it's been going?
It's amazing where it came from, right? It went from me listening to this podcast that you were doing with Dan and Steve and some other folks in the Gauntlet Prime, right? In Gauntlet Houston, all physical location. You guys used Meetup and that was really successful for you. And then you moved and all of a sudden you needed to go online and I was excited to play with you. So we played and used Meetup for a while. It was kind of just you running stuff, getting your feet wet. And then I said, I'll run some stuff too. And
those rough early sessions where I was like, online, WTF, like, what is this? Like, I don't know how to do this. I can't even tell what you guys are thinking. You're not next to me. Yeah.
And thank goodness you didn't start off with like audio only. At least we had Hangouts where we could see the little avatars of everybody, right? And over the last year, though, 2016 was the building blocks. 2017, Lowell came on, Michael stepped up, David Lafreniere was running a lot of games. We had people kind of cycle in and out. Dylan Ross ran some games. River did too. There were a lot of people who stepped up.
Christo, yeah.
Yeah, Christo running stuff. That's right. Gosh, I totally forgot. Frazier ran some things too. Oh man, it's just so many cool folks that contributed and helped to build out and pad out the calendar. It's been exciting. We went from Meetup because they said, hey, you don't have a physical space. We hate you. And then we tried out attending.io, which was great until it wasn't. And now it's this really robust, continually improving gaming calendar that we can use to schedule, and you get emails for it. So it's really, really fun. I can add that to my Google Calendar. I love looking across my Google Calendar, seeing all the things that are marked in because boy, I've got that $7 page and, if Lowell posts something up, bam, I'm in there, And Spirit of 77 just tomorrow night that Tyler's running is so exciting. And it's like we had Gauntlet Con and that was gigantic. But then I look at the next week and the week after that, all the way up to Thanksgiving, and man, there's still stuff every single night. I love looking at the calendar and seeing all those little dots for all the different things that we have set up. It's so cool.
All little red dots. I know, me too. I'm a red dot addict. I go to the calendar. I'm like, look at all those red dots. Oh my God. And knowing that most of the games are full, right? Like the fill rate is insane. I mean, I think right now there are more games than normal that aren't filled right now, just because we have a lot of brand new GMs, and we have some stuff we're getting ready to kind of get those games filled. But setting that aside, like, I mean, I think Garrett did some math one time, and it was something like 90% of the games at any given moment were like completely filled or had enough players to make, right? And that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And even the games that don't fill 100%, like I love it when there's a little bit of flexibility for a couple of games. Because, Lowell, I know you ran through GauntletCon, you ran Worldwide Wrestling with 2 people, which I think is crazy bonkers. But you said that was really good, right?
It was really good.
Awesome.
And I love a good 3-player game, love 4-player game.
Same. I'm a 3-player guy if I can get away with it. Yeah.
It's great.
I'm so glad you brought up attending.io, Rich, because
I hate that thing.
I don't intend to disparage attending.io because it was actually a pretty good stopgap until we got our site up. But one thing I've never shared with the community, I think some of us know it, but not many, but no one really knows it. But there was like a 2 or 3 day period when attending.io went down, and it seemed like we had lost every event, and there were like dozens and dozens of events on the calendar. That was, I don't think I've ever had a more stressful, like 24 hours in my life. Like, I don't think I've ever been more stressed out in my entire life. I'm a lawyer who's been involved in pretty, significant cases, and nothing as stressful as that day that attending.io went down. I was freaking the fuck out. Like, it was so bad. But I look back on it though, and I'm like, oh gosh, like we got through that stuff, like we're here, and it's all cool and good. So.
Yeah, I still have the thing with attending.io. Even though our current schedule is like it's solid, it's rock solid, I still will create Google events, like, which aren't easy to get to anymore in Google Plus, but I'll create Google events just to have a backup because I'm so
you never
worried.
know. I know, it's yeah.
I mean, those are nice. It pops up on the calendar. It's got the little pick by it. It's a nice little. I'll have to look into seeing how to actually set those up because I just create an event on my own calendar. Yeah, I wasn't around for the good times with attending.io, or maybe I just sort of naively didn't realize how good things were before it started acting really weird and not giving me people's emails or other info to actually invite them to.
Right.
Well, and we've built that system. The system we have is custom. It's for us. It was built to our specifications. It's solid, and I don't think you can underestimate how important that is and how strong that is to what we do. I mean, it's amazing.
Agreed, 100%. I mean, I'm sure Rich can speak to this too, but it saves me literal hours a week, right? Mm-hmm. Like having a news site like shaved hours off my Gauntlet week. And, the site still has like little things that we will continue to improve on and fix as the, months go on. But by and large, it's pretty good. And it's a big, it's a big help. And we had that infrastructure kind of ready to go for GauntletCon too, right? So it was a nice, like, just everything we're kind of learning about doing this is feeding into other things and helping us build it out, which I think is great. Rich, I'll probably swing back to you for the general thoughts about this year.
Sure.
Lowell, tell me about your 2017 on Gauntlet Hangouts. How'd it go?
I mostly focused on doing the TGIT Thursday games, as I had started in 2016, where I was doing mostly 2 sessions and then 2 sessions and running a lot of games that we don't usually see in the Gauntlet. We did a lot of Fate. I tried to do newer releases like the 7th Sea Quick Start and the 7th Sea Katai Quick Start, some trad games like Conan, and I'm doing Rollmaster in December, and stuff that we hadn't seen like Chill and Feng Shui, and these things that we might not otherwise see, and give me an excuse to get these off my shelf, to have done them, to have tried them, and to have seen how the games work. So I was very happy with that. A lot of games, there's some games that in the end, I'm like, nope, I'm not going to run that again. But there are some that I have come to love from having done those in 2 shots. And then the other thing, of course, I've been doing the Sunday morning sessions, and I try to do those for the full month. And of course, that started with the Worldwide Wrestling, Gauntlet League of Wrestling promotion that,
yes.
Oh man, so good. It's so good.
Some of my favorite stuff I did this year for sure.
That, and then when we did the second round of that later this year and connected that with GauntletCon, we had all kinds of callbacks, and that was solid. So I really appreciated that. It was a chance to do things like Mutineer Zero and The Veil, games that I think pay off over several sessions. So I was really happy with that. And even some of my own experiments I was able to play out there. So I like doing that. That's obviously could continue. And I like the sort of difference in tone and approach that I've got between those nights.
I was super happy about TGI Thursday this year because the games you were running definitely expanded our player base, right? I think there were a number of people who got interested in the Gauntlet, even if they didn't play in those games. There were a number of people who got interested in the Gauntlet because there was this like sort of higher profile, more trad flavored game, associated with what we were doing, right? So I thought that was great just from a sort of like building the Gauntlet, kind of perspective. But also what I thought was really great about TGIT, from what I could observe at least, was TGIT became kind of like a really important part of like how those games and the publishers of those games like promote and market, right? Like we would see them like link to those sessions, like some of those videos ended up in Kickstarters, that kind of thing. So I thought as far as like, of all of our calendar series this year, TGIT was the best at like sort of, kind of like cracking open the door on the Gauntlet a little bit, right? Which I think was really helpful. I think GauntletCon really like blasted that door open, but I think TGIT was a good, like, kind of getting that going.
Well, and I'm hoping that we'll see companies that have GMs that they would normally send to conventions and stuff, that they'll say, hey, we'd like to do one of our games to showcase it for the Gauntlet. I think that that's awesome because we get to play them, but B, it's a great opportunity for them to connect with new customer base and provide them with a marketing tool that they can then use afterwards.
Yeah. And the games, I mean, look, I'm just going to toot our own horn here a little bit. Like you get, I mean, like publishers of role-playing games, if you get a video AP or YouTube from Lowell of your game, like that's great. Like that's like gold because like it's usually great players. Lowell's a great GM. It's just all gravy. So yeah, I think it's a great.
Well, and to say, I mean, Rich is the one who showed me this because Rich was picking up games that I had never heard of. and bring them to the table, and I would go, wow, what this is a crazy game, and it's really cool to see it played out. So I mean, all of my stuff there is following on those footsteps.
Aw, thanks, man. But yeah, I think you've got a really rarefied taste. You are so bold with the games. Like you will take on stuff where I'm like, that would take me 6 months to ramp up.
I know, me too. Yeah. Like there's no way I would like get one of those great big glossy big books and be like, oh yeah, I'm running that next month. Right. Yeah. No way. It would take months and months of preparation. Awesome. Michael, you are fairly newer to the program, but you ran a lot of sessions this year. How was your Gauntlet Hangouts 2017?
Oh, really great. This is actually a good timing because we're right up on my 1 year anniversary of my very first Gauntlet game. That was a game with Dungeon World with run by Dan Fowler, involving snakes and our good friend Karsuit.
He loves snakes. He's very fond of them.
Yeah. So yeah, from there jumped into some story games, from there played some more Dungeon World early in the year. And then started running things with Monster of the Week, which, went, about as well as I could have expected. I'd run, a couple PBTA games a little bit before. It was definitely a little bit intimidating having, Jason in my very first Gauntlet game, but, he's such a great player that it made things easy for me. And we had, really, really good set of players all around for that. And that's one of the things that's really impressed me, with the Gauntlet overall is that, if you're running games for the Gauntlet, the players will help you out quite a bit. Like, it's not like you really have to like pull things from people and make, it's not like you have to like force people to, put on a game for you. You got people that are coming to the table that are energized and they're ready to bring something really cool. So from there, after Monster of the Week, for a while I was running, mostly games on Saturdays and Sundays, like weekend games. I ran a long campaign of The Watch, which was really, really good. I adore The Watch. And, some of the games in general, we had some really good Monster Hearts, which had been a system I've been very eager to get on the table and really eager to see more of as well. But, a lot of focus on PBTA stuff so far, and I've kind of knocked out a lot of the PBTA systems that I want to run. Plenty of them I'll be going back to next year, but kind of from here starting to explore a bit outside of that, as we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to just throw in real quick that, yeah, it was I know the very first sessions that you ran were Monster of the Week for Gauntlet Hangouts. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was some of the first GMing you'd done, period, right?
No, I used to run like D&D back in high school, I'd done a little bit of PBTA stuff like since then. I've kind of gotten back into the hobby in the past, like, a couple of years because I discovered things that aren't D&D that like I can play because I like D&D, but I'm kind of bored by it at this point. I've played enough of it before. So like finding that, getting into stuff, and I've been really, really eager to get some games going, for a while. I'd had a small group together, but a couple people moved away and that kind of fell apart. So like I was really hungry to be playing games, to be running games, and like the Gauntlet, like really like, helped out so much with that. I mean, this was like by far like my best year for gaming in general. Was able to do 76 sessions. About a third of those I was running or facilitating.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Which like, as soon as I got involved in the Gauntlet, like I was like hitting Jason up like, all right, like when can I run something? Because I've been very ready to be running more games for quite a while now. And the Gauntlet, kind of gave me that opportunity to do and run and play as much games as I really wanted to.
Yeah, that's awesome. What I was going to say was, the reason why I joined that first game of yours that you ran, those Monster of the Week sessions, it was a GM support thing, right? Like I was joining it because it was the first thing you were doing on our calendar, and I'd had you as a player previously, and so I kind of had a good sense that like you were going to do a good job already. Like I kind of knew that. But one of the things I was really happy to do, and what I knew I would be able to do by being there, is I would be able to come away from that game and say, hey guys, Michael did a really fucking awesome job, right? And he did a great job, and you guys should go get in his games, right? And so I wish I had time to do more of that. Like I would love to get in on like some of the new folks who are coming up, like to put stuff on the calendar. For a lot of them, it's, I know they're like a little nervous, right? And I wish I could join those games so I could be like, hey, you're doing an awesome job, give feedback where needed, and kind of like pump them up a little bit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really excited for all the people getting on the calendar now. I'm in Shame's Game of the Watch currently. I'm going to be in Tyler's in January. But a lot of people I'm really excited to have running games on the Gauntlet now.
Cool. Well, so Rich, swing back to you. How has your 2017 been?
2017 gaming for the Gauntlet was amazing. I didn't run nearly as much as you, Jason. I ran 63 games for the Gauntlet in 2 different series. So I have one that I'd envision late 2016, and it really hit its full stride in 2017, which is the Gauntlet City Limits. And that's the one that Lowell kind of complimented me on. Thank you, Lowell. That's where I do this PBTA podcast, right? So I don't want to just fall into the rut of only rolling 2d6. Sometimes I want to roll like a d8 or something. Maybe as a GM, I want to roll dice, crazy stuff like that. So Gauntlet City Limits was the idea of like a living campaign city, but I'm kind of an ADD type of guy. I can't just stick to one system. So every month I run a biweekly game. It's always in Gauntlet City, and I run lots of different types of game systems. A lot of small press indie stuff that I love and I felt most comfortable with. I use it to launch. So things like Lacuna Part 1 and Inspectors and Cyrun. But then I tried crazier stuff like Dogs, which came from Knights of the Dinner Table, right? And Putin, which my buddy Adam Robichaux had written this game, and it was like it's the closest PBTA thing. It's slightly inspired by PBTA. According to Vincent and McKay Baker, it probably is PBTA, but it doesn't have dice, so I'm just going to say it doesn't count for the purpose of Gauntlet City Limits. I'm writing my own rules here. Tokyo Brain Pop, Familiars, Clown Helsing, One Foot in the Grave, all these crazy games that people maybe have seen. Some of them I find on drive-thru RPG sales. I'm like, wow, this sounds really neat. I'm going to put it on the calendar and I'll learn it in 2 months because that's how we schedule.
GCL was a fucking heroic effort.
Thanks.
To me, between GCL and TGI Thursday, we were getting such a wide range and variety of games. I mean, and like, even though GCL inspired TGI Thursday, like there were really different classes of games being played, right? Like the GCL games were like these small games no one had ever heard of. And what I love about it though is, like I think One Percenter, which I think was a 2016 game, but One Percenter is a great example of like, I think like when GCL was working really well, like, and it was like really bringing to light, it was uncovering gems basically. Right. And that, I think that was awesome. Like I really loved it. And it was a huge inspiration for me too, which is about some stuff I'm going to talk about later. So.
Thank you. I love Gauntlet City. It has been so fun to watch some stalwarts who have played in a number of games, from Lowell to Jason Cox to River. And we had Pam early on before she was swallowed up by Dresden Files, Fate Accelerated. Gosh, Pam, you should come back. We miss you. And watching folks kind of play new characters, and we start to, like, we have our own canon now, right? And it's not kind of canon that's gonna, like, you have to be in on the joke. It's a canon that we create every time that we play a new game. And I love it. And we're working on a map. I'm so excited. It's a little preview of 2018. We're working on a map of Gauntlet City. And I'm so stoked for 2018 and more Gauntlet City games and new stuff, recycling some old stuff back in. And that's not it, right? I also had Saturday Morning Cartoons, which you came up with the idea for the name, which I love. And Saturday Morning Cartoons is a weekly thing. Every month is a different mini series of games. Most of the time I'm running PBTA, but that's where One Percenter really hit its stride. One Percenter was debuted on the Gauntlet City Limits, but then I brought it into Saturday Morning Cartoons because damn, that game is good. Like, it's so awesome. But then weird little games like Havoc Brigade. And I love the Saturday Morning Cartoon stuff because it gives me the opportunity to tell a little bit longer story. Like Gauntlet City Limits, we're going to play 2 sessions, a couple hours. You could basically give up a night of TV and bam, you're in a Gauntlet City Limits game, in and out, no fuss, no muss. Saturday Morning Cartoons, we have the opportunity to tell a story. I kind of feel like it's like a BBC BBC series kind of thing, where we're going to get enough episodes out of this show to have some story arcs and to really tell some stories that we can take chances on.
Yeah.
Right. We're not trying to play for the long game. We're not worried about, at 8th level, I'll finally get this special class, right? No, you need to get in and you need to do what you want your character to have done, right? Tell that story with us. And that's what I love about Saturday Morning Cartoons. It's been super, super duper fun.
Awesome. My 2017 was great as well. Really great year. I think I pretty consistently ran about 3 games per week and sometimes 4. Sundays were mostly dedicated to Dungeon World this year. I had a long-term campaign thing going on this year, which I'll talk about later. Wednesdays and Saturdays were 4 to 5 session PBTA series games, except very recently when Saturdays and Sundays have seen more like non-powered by the apocalypse, like story game 1-shots or 2-shots. So that's mostly what I've been doing. Great year. I think the one thing that really sticks out to me as something I've observed this year when I think about just the full sweep of the year, because this was the first year when we had like lots of new people, right? Like lots of new people getting involved and kind of getting to play with them for an entire year. And the big thing I noticed was as the year has gone on, the role playing has gotten so refined, like incredibly refined. I am noticing an not insane, but like a really, really careful attention to things like narrative pacing, story arcs for characters, making sure we hit certain narrative beats, just all that stuff. Like I've noticed that the players that I play with, more regularly are really, really getting into like role-playing games as a collaborative storytelling medium, right? As opposed to just like playing a game, right? And I've really loved that, like just a real refinement in the players' like style and an approach to gaming. So I know that's a little abstract, but that's how I feel about it, But overall, pretty great year. I'm so excited about next year. Let's talk about highlights. I mean, Lowell, what were some of your highlights in terms of like sessions this year?
So I can think of a couple of things. One is, as I mentioned, a few of the games that came up were just magnificent surprises for me. And I put Kuro, which is a J-horror cyberpunk game, on the calendar just because it looked interesting. And when I went to actually go to run it, I was like, oh, this system is really crunchy. And it's got these weird dice stuff in it, and I kind of condensed down the skills, and I'm really not sure how it's going to be and stuff. And wow, I loved it. Even the weird dice stuff that I was really hesitant about, the players were like, oh no, that was crazy and insane, and it made the game weird and hard to manage and right for the tone of it. And I really got to play out through J-horror tropes. I love Japanese horror, both, manga and movies and anime.
It's such a cool setting. Yeah.
And I love it. And that was a complete surprise to me. And I ran it 2 different times because when I went to Sherry and said, hey, I'm running Wednesday things, what do you want me to run? She went, I want to play Kuro again. And we just got done with another 2 sessions of it, and weird horror stories that you don't find out why this happened. Like Japanese horror, things happen and you're not sure why, and you try and stop them, and maybe you've stopped them, but you kind of don't know the big picture. So I love it. Great discovery for me. And then the other thing is, 2 times this year I've run things that I kind of wrote. I did the Changing the Lost PBTA hack that I did, and then the sort of Game of Thrones Fate game that I really put a lot of work, was meta level, and it was trying to simulate a kingdom and a family level, and switching between those things. And players were willing to take the chance, and they were really good about playing with the rules that we had and working and finding, not exploiting the edge cases, but going, okay, well, here's what we've got written. Let's play with this. And both games were dynamite. That Reign of Crows game, still just, for me, unbelievably good. I mean, it's not a great system, and it was really kind of hard work in some places, but what we got out of that 4 sessions, I absolutely adore. Every one of those characters. I mean, Patrick and Sherry's character and David Lafreniere's end moment in that game was brilliant. It's both of those things. I'm really happy that people are willing to do that. I've been pleased with how they came out, and I'm excited to maybe try that next year. I have a couple of things I might do that with, not as playtest, but just here we're going to play this and let's see what we think.
That's the untold story of gaming with the Gauntlet. Not necessarily Hangouts yet, but on our Slack channel, I don't know if you guys pay attention to this, but on our Slack channel, people do pick up games of like something they just created all the time. Like I've got this game, who wants to play it with me, in a couple of hours, and a couple people will jump in there and they'll go do it and then they'll talk about it afterwards. I'm excited to formalize that a little bit with some more like actual formal play testing stuff on the calendar. But I think it speaks to this idea of, our community is so supportive in this way, right? Like getting people to play test games, it's not easy, right? Like I have personally historically found it really difficult to do. So I love that one of the aspects of our community being so focused on like sort of like support, right? Is that like people are willing to like give those things a shot. So yeah, I think that's pretty terrific to hear. Anything else you want to say, Lowell, before I keep going?
No, I'm good.
Awesome. Well, so Michael, what were some of your highlights?
Yeah, I would definitely second what you were saying about Kerr. I was in a couple of those sessions, and it is crunchy and weird, but the setting is so cool, and like I loved the characters we had together for that. It was like a weird varied set of like, all right, these 3 characters thrown in a van together, and like they've got to deal with like what the hell is going on. And that was a really cool mystery that you ran. So I mean, when I was thinking about games and figuring out like my highlights, I was thinking about Kuro a bit as well. It's when I was like, man, like that was actually like a really cool couple of sessions.
Yeah.
I would say another highlight for me would be the Watch. That's a system that I really love, and I got to run a kind of mid-length campaign of that. I did a 2-month thing over the course of about 8 sessions, and I had a consistent set of 4 players in that, which nobody was in all 8 sessions. We were kind of, people would be in like 6 or 7. So we'd get to see different combinations of characters. And I really like that. It's cool having a session in there where you have like 2 or 3 characters. We had one that was just 2 characters, and it was really cool seeing how the 2 of them like interact in the middle of that campaign when you put them, just the 2 of them together. I find the 7 sessions helpful for like character development, where the women that we had at the start of that campaign were changed, and they were physically and like, personally like different people at the end of it, which was really cool evolution to see. There were so many great character moments with that set of characters. So I really adored running that, and might be running something along those lines again in the future. Might do another watch campaign or I don't know. I'm definitely interested in doing some more 2-month campaigns like that, because that really worked well for me. Cheat Your Own Adventure as well. We had a really great session of that, adapting that into sort of a Pulp Fiction style story, where, we were able to tell kind of 2 separate stories in the course of one session, that kind of tied together. I mean, the second one took place before the first one, actually, and there were a lot of references to things outside of the story. Those were a lot of fun. It was, kind of really goofy session with a few people, and that was just a great way to spend an afternoon. There was a scene towards the end of that, which I still remember very starkly, where 2 of the characters are hooking up at the back of a strip club, where the lose condition in this was that you face Marcellus' wrath, and, the character, the woman was bringing this guy to see his dying mother, and the 2 of them are hooking up in the back of this strip club, and David, De La Freni described this scene. they're hooking up in the, yeah. And this was a failed condition, so the 2 of them were hooking up at the back of the strip club while we're cutting to his mother dying alone.
It was so dark. David, yeah, he does this thing where he can do like dark that's like somehow really funny, and like you don't want to laugh, but like, oh my God, it's like the darkest fucking thing. I love that about his play. But yeah, those were great. I was going to talk about that too. Those were a highlight for me as well. Anything else? Any other highlights besides those?
Definitely plenty of highlights. Our Monster Arts campaign, especially the second half of it, there was, with that open-ended style PBTA game, I was a little bit, I was running it okay at first, but I didn't really, fully get like how scene framing works in that. And then once we kind of got that together, it really, really clicked for us. And the final couple of sessions of that, especially, were pretty intense, pretty wild, and like actually pretty surprising as well. So that campaign was really cool. I've got, a few, it was a great year in general. I love playing, in Angle Kite setting. That was another longer campaign that David ran, that I was only in there for half of it. I think he did 4 months. I was in 2 months before I sort of knowingly like semi-killed off my character. Not all the way. I was basically captured. And then he brought me and a couple other players back for a really spectacular finale that was very satisfying. That was really cool as well. But overall, ton of good games I was involved in.
Cool. Rich, what were your highlights?
There are a bunch, but if I have to narrow it down, I would say that Saturday Morning Cartoons, there was a Mask series, Masks New Generation, which is a young adult superhero game, and we had a Shadow the Doomed, Sika the Legacy, Impulse, who was a Janus, but he was a speedster, Hashtag the Delinquent. Thanks, Michael.
Hashtag.
Argent, the Protege. And then, so back in 2016, there was a Masks game that I ran that Jason, you played in. And one of the characters was an outsider by the name of Alari.
Oh, Mole Princess.
The Mole Princess, that's right. And I put this game up, and then all of a sudden Philip, who played Alari, he signed up, but he couldn't make it for the whole session, for the whole series, which was fine. That's one of the cool things about the way we do things is drop in, drop out, right? And I love to have a through line of a couple people, but people popping in and out, especially with Masks, works really well. And I knew I was only going to have him for like one session, and I was just so excited. So the end of the previous session had the Doomed opening up, like he had shadow powers, just kind of like Cloak from Cloak and Dagger. He'd open up the shadow powers, and he failed on the roll. And I was like, okay, we're going to end on a cliffhanger with you guys getting teleported through the Shadow Realm and you don't know where you come in. And the next session, it turned out one of my favorite sessions of the year was Alari, who is the Mole Princess. So imagine, Mole Man from Fantastic Four. Like, that's where she comes from, is the Underrealm, and the Mole King is her dad. And he's a supervillain, a Golden Age supervillain. He's kind of semi-retired, but maybe not exactly. And we kicked off with just Mole Princess, no connection to the rest of the team. And it turns out that she had returned home because her cousin was getting married. And so it was all about the wedding prep. And there was the cousin was marrying a giant worm creature. And then all of a sudden everybody else portaled in and there was this huge wedding reception. I got to do a really bad Wallace Shawn impression for the Mole King. I practiced it for a week. It was terrible. I had so much fun. And it was crazy because at one point, Hashtag has these crazy illusions. He fails a roll and he is trying to bring back these illusions, but it turns out they're D&D characters from when he was a 12-year-old. This was madcap as all get out. And it still had this through line of caring and support, and the characters kind of fussed with each other, but they made up at the end and they made their way up the huge drill machine, got back to Halcyon City, and the last few moments were Alari back on the service world where she wanted to be with a bit of a team. It was so great. One session, all that happened in one session. It was one of my favorite games of the year by far. Already mentioned 1%er, but I'm going to talk more specifically about a series. So kicked it off at the beginning of the year, Gauntlet City Limits. I was like, oh my goodness, this game is good. And David, man, is this the David show? Because David Lafreniere had played a character in the Gauntlet City Limits game. And then when I ran a new 1%er for Saturday morning cartoons, he wanted to come back in. So we decided that it was just going to be a crossover. He went to join this other new crew. So he was we built a brand new biker gang and they called them the Filthy Condors. And I just loved that through line of going from Gauntlet City Limits to California. And we were in a Google map and we could drill in and okay, you're over at this hotel. It wasn't map combat as much as just let's let this inspire us. Let's drop into Google Streets. Oh, you're going to run down here. And it looks like maybe the cops will come up through this way. And you got this cross section here. And
nice.
The game was so slick. And there was Michael Barford was playing an undercover cop. And I was like, what? Oh man, how's this even going to work? We don't have double cross mechanics. We're just going to go crazy here. And, the moments that we had running fights with these guys who called themselves the Diablos, but they misspelled their name, and so they were Diabolos.
Italian, that would be correct. So.
And we had a Canadian veterinarian who wasn't licensed, so she just lived in a bus in the middle of a national forest. And that's where they went to get their medical treatment. It was cool. It was a little kooky, but it was hard too, in these moments of the Filthy Condors bonding, of some of them screwing up and the way they would deal with it. And again, David Lafreniere just playing a hard as hell mofo that ended up being, he was the Daryl from Walking Dead. He was just I'm the hard ass sergeant, to a point where the player of the president of the club wasn't able to be there, so he stepped in. We story-wise made him step up to be the president of the club, and watching him being able to relate with the group in one way and having to shift and tilt it into another way, so fascinating. Man, that was that whole series was top notch. Really, really good stuff.
David's my ringer. If I'm running a series and I've got brand new players and I'm really nervous about impressing them, because I get so nervous with new players. I'm a wreck when I have a brand new player in a series, or if I'm unsure about a game, it's the first time I've run it, I will always ask David to join, so that I'm hey, will you sign up for this? Because I need my ringer.
I do the same with Sherry. I get Sherry into those games when I'm uncertain.
Yep. Gotta have your ringers. That's awesome, Rich. That's great to hear. My highlights I'll be pretty quick about mine. So those Cheat Your Own Adventure games set in the Pulp Fiction universe a revelation to me. It's a game that I already loved, and it's a game that I was already sort of hacking, right? Like coming up with like different lose states and all that stuff. I did that during Dia de los Muertos. But the Pulp Fiction ones, we got to see this like very simple game be used to tell crisscrossing, twisty narratives. And I loved it. I was like, oh my God, like it just totally opened my eyes to like the potential of a game that I already knew had so much potential. So that was really great. And they were just fun too. But the things I want to talk about mostly, I guess, are Monster Hearts Mercy Falls and Dungeon World We Hunt the Keepers. These were my two big campaigns for the year. We Hunt the Keepers was basically all year. Like I just ran it for basically once a week for all year. And then Mercy Falls was more sporadic, but we still ended up doing about, with all the spin-offs and everything, probably close to 20 sessions in that world. So, wow. So good. It's the first time probably since high school for me that I've done like campaign world, right? Like we are going to have a long-term campaign. Like I haven't done that in years and years. And for me, what the gameplay in those sessions was great. Mercy Falls in particular towards the end was just so good. Like I've never been so impressed with a group of players ever than I was in those final sessions of Mercy Falls. Not final, but the most recent ones, I should say. Just exquisite, refined role playing. I was just so almost emotional about it. Like it was so good. But sort of bigger picture, We Hunt the Keepers and Monster Hearts Mercy Falls, and Mercy Falls also includes Cthulhu Dark and some other things. But what they did was they showed me, and I think the people playing with me and anybody paying attention to them on YouTube or whatever, that you can do long-term campaigns scheduling games the way that we do, right? Open table, sort of like breaks between sessions, like maybe not all running together, that kind of thing, right? And what I loved about it was we were able to build out these very rich and deep campaign worlds collaboratively. And yet they were so fleshed out and rich. And yet you did not have to know anything about them to join them anew, right? Like anyone could jump in the middle of We Hunt the Keepers, and it didn't always matter whether you knew exactly what had happened, before. Like we could always get you caught up well enough, And Mercy Falls, especially because there's so much like stuff out there for Mercy Falls now, like the pocket size plays and things like that. There's like an invitation to like get involved in it, like you were invited to like, learn more about it and see what's been going on, but you don't have to. It's not a requirement. And it just really, really touched off something for me. I think next year is going to be more of that style of gaming, like more long-term campaigns. So those were definitely my highlights.
Well, I just want to say, Jason, on that point, I think one of the strengths was I came into that second series of Mercy Falls not having watched or read any of the first series. And I would say within the first hour, I felt like I was up to speed. I was part of the game. I felt like I was on equal footing with the other players. Like they were all welcoming. You did a really good job bringing me in. And I thought that was wonderful. I mean, it was as good as I could have expected that to go for me.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. I think that's what I want people to know, right? Like if you're thinking about joining Gauntlet Hangouts games, we never, I don't want to say never, but the vast majority of our games, you don't have to have any experience with the game. You don't have to have any experience with the campaign. If you can get in, you are in, and I think that's just a really, really cool thing about what we do. Let's talk about things we're looking forward to for next year. Lowell, what do you have in the pipeline? What's coming up?
So one of the things I want to definitely keep doing is probably with the TGIT is there's that space sort of between indie, OSR, and trad games of these weird games like from Pelgrane and Atlas and so on that are games that are big ticket games that people aren't playing that much, or they're being very niche that I want to bring to the table. So like I'm doing Unknown Armies in January and I'm doing Star Trek Adventures, and I want to keep doing those. And bringing that to the table. It's something actually that Tyler Lomanak, he's also doing that. And I'm super excited about what he's doing with those games. So I think that's dynamite. I'm going to make sure that every single month that there is a Fate game on the calendar every month. there's going to be at least one from me every month, and hopefully we'll get some other people doing that.
That'll expand the player base in a huge way.
I love Fate.
Huge.
I know it's not everybody's taste, but I dig it a lot, and I think I run it pretty well.
That's the thing about the community is we don't just have one agenda for a particular game style, Lowell. I love that you are pushing Fate. I think that's fantastic because there's an underserved community there, and I really want them to come and play with us.
I agree completely. I wish we had an OSR person on right now because I think that's something else that like we're getting better at too, right? Those games are not to my taste. I have no desire to play them, but I'm happy people are doing it.
Yeah, I bet I'm going to do Mutant Call Classics next year, so that's one of the things I want to do, which is OSR Gamma World. But anyway, I also want to work through the Magpie games. I haven't really run those, but I want to do Apillion, I want to do Masks, I want to do Urban Shadows. Those are on my agenda to run. But more importantly, I've decided that each quarter for the Wednesday games, I'm going to run for the entire quarter one game. And people can jump in, jump out. The games are going to be slightly episodic. So if you're there, we're going to have a story that time, but there's going to be a linking thing. Mutineer Zero is the thing I'm doing in the first quarter. It's a post-apocalyptic game, and the game's very much built on, okay, here's the threat for this session. Are we in the camp or not? And then there's a continuing thing of the arc of the community that you're building up. And so that's going to develop over the 12 sessions. And so we'll get that larger story. I think I want to do Blades in the Dark that way for maybe second quarter, because that's a game we can have characters in and out.
That's easy for that, right?
I think it'd be perfect for it. And there's a couple of other in that Mutineer Zero series, and there are a few other games that have that kind of easy setup running through line with characters coming in and out. So I'm excited about that experiment.
I mean, Blades in the Dark is how I run my long-term campaigns codified.
Yeah.
It's like a codification of what I do, which I love. Yeah.
I think that will be super easy for that. We'll definitely do another Worldwide Wrestling promotion at some point during the year.
Woohoo!
I've got to get a few months to catch my breath from that, because Worldwide Wrestling is like pushing a car down a hill, and then I'm desperately trying to keep it on the road, and I have no brakes. That's what it feels like.
So long as your promotion goes to Twilight Bay, Gauntlet City, Mercy Falls, Appleton, Wisconsin.
Oh, no.
And some of our other places.
The man in yellow wrestler. Okay.
Oh God.
I love the idea of like the entire universe. Can all be like Worldwide Wrestling connects all of it.
Well, some of the wrestlers in the Worldwide Wrestling promotion were actually luchadors who fought supernatural creatures in another one of the sets of games when I ran Silent Legion. So Dr. Explosiones and some of the others. The other thing I want to do is I'd like to do some more theme months. I want to go back and do some retro games, either use old games to do new modules like James Bond to do Knights Black Agents, or vice versa. I might do another month where I just run Fate like I did last year, because I really enjoyed that. So I got a lot of ideas. I'm going to run all 12 months. It's going to be freaking awesome, and I'm going to have lots of cool stuff going.
Love it. Michael, what do you have coming up next year?
Yeah, probably going to be, continuing to run, a mix of PBTA stuff and starting to explore some other stuff. A couple things that are kind of at the top of my list right now are going to be Dogs in the Vineyard, which I haven't run or played in yet. I'm really eager to do both of those in 2018. In 2017, the top of my list was Monster Hearts, and I still want to play more Monster Hearts, but now my number one unplayed and unrun is Dogs in the Vineyard. So that's one that I want to get on there. I'm really interested in Melandros now. I listened to the Gauntlet Con Melandros game, and both really enjoyed the story itself, and I'm really intrigued by the system as well, because one thing that at least to my knowledge, that PBTA hasn't done too much of is exploring like contemporary drama like settings, like a dramatic setting,
historical settings,
dramatic or historical settings. And it seems like Melandros does that really well. And I've noticed that there's even like modules for it that set it in like Australia, for instance, or like during the Russian Revolution, both of which look really cool. And I think that the drama system in general looks really interesting to me right now. So maybe in February, I'll have some of that. I'm interested in running a bit more of Dungeon World and maybe Monster Hearts as well sometime next year. I'm really eager to play in Monster Hearts. So if you're thinking about running something, Monster Hearts, you will get players, not just myself. You will get other players as well. Yeah.
Demand is so high for Monster Hearts. Like,
I'm here demanding
insane.
it. Yes.
Yeah. I get like repeated inquiries of like, when's more Monster Hearts coming? When's more? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Soon.
I'll probably run some more in the middle of the year, but I strongly encourage everybody else to as well. Space Worm versus Moonicorn is also on my list. I checked that out. I got a PDF of that a few months ago, and I'm super intrigued by it, but also a little bit intimidated because there's like a lot going on.
Super lot.
And then I'm also going to be playtesting starting in January my space opera system, Sea of Stars. I'm really excited. I've been playtesting that a little bit so far. The system basically works. I kind of want to see in January how it plays out in a short campaign kind of setting, because that's really what it's short and long campaign is what it's designed for. So I'm eager to see how that goes, and then probably midway through the year I'll be doing a little bit more of that as well.
Awesome. Rich, what do you have coming up?
Well, I hinted to Gauntlet City Limits continuing to 2018. It definitely is. Excited about the map possibility, creating a map that still leaves open spaces. We're going to be exploring a little bit of the darker side of Gauntlet City in 2018.
Yeah.
We've got the Vigilante hack. We're going to check in with Gauntlet City Elementary with monsters and other childish things.
Nice.
Preppy Punk, which is this crazy little game, which the difficulty numbers are based on the age of what you're going to try versus your own age. It's wild. All of their strengths, which is this game that I found randomly, is kind of like if everybody was playing Blade, the Marvel character. Is so cool. Murders and Acquisitions, and Home by Dark, which I learned about because of our very own Dan Lewis. And so I'm really excited about Gauntlet City Limits.
Will you also do Dude Run?
Okay.
Please.
It's actually on my list.
I really want to play
Dude
that.
Run will happen. Yeah, Dude Run. Another from Robert Nolan and Creepy Doll Studios. So yeah, Dude Run. We'll go ahead and pencil that in. But the thing that has my brain just buzzing like crazy is
buzzing like
Wars.
a lightsaber, maybe.
Oh yeah, it is.
Vom, vom.
I know, except I hate Jedi. So Star Wars Saturdays. Star Wars Saturdays. So again, it's a Saturday morning cartoons. Some of them may run in the afternoon, so some of our West Coast folks, like poor Yoshi, don't have to get up at 6 a.m. his time.
Or that I don't have to get up at 9 a.m. my time.
That's practically hedonistic. What the fuck are you talking about, Michael?
We're kicking it off this December with Star Wars World. Games like Apocalypse World on Tatooine, Impulse Drive, a personal fave of mine, Night Witches. But we're also going to run some non-PBTA stuff. Like, thank you, Tom, for suggesting The Few. So The Few is like originally was a World War II fighting ace type game. We're redoing that for TIE Fighters. No, I'm sorry. We're redoing that for X-Wing Squadron. It's going to be amazing. Gonna try Dogs in the Vineyard, except with Jedi. Stay Frosty with some Stormtroopers. Of course, I'm gonna have some Lady Blackbird in there. So Star Wars Saturdays is a thing where it's going to be a living campaign. We're going to tell a whole big story, a saga, but each individual game is going to have its own highlights and marks that will leave an indelible kind of imprint on where we're headed. I'm not charting everything out, but I do have kind of a microscope type idea of where we're going to plot in some of these exciting moments. Oh, I'm just so stoked for Star Wars Saturdays.
Nice.
Yeah, those sessions are going to be packed every week. I already know it. It's a great idea. Cool. I'm just going to go briefly through my stuff because I want to talk about like bigger picture stuff, but I'm going to be doing a series. I've already started it actually, but I'm going to be continuing a series called Wednesday Time Machine. And in Wednesday Time Machine, the idea is taking an old D&D module or an old system and kind of changing it, switching it up a little bit, repurposing it, recontextualizing it for a more modern style play. It is essentially my other podcast, Fear of a Black Dragon, kind of like in calendar form. Like we're going to be like, I'm very proactively like doing things just to support the content for that show. And so if you want to be part of that, Tom already does that pretty aggressively too. So come join that game with me. So Wednesday Time Machine is awesome. We're kicking off January with Ravenloft, the original Ravenloft module, not the 2E box set. So that should be fun. The other things I have going on, Saturday Morning Creep Show is a new series I kicked off. I'm trying to get away from PBTA games a little bit too, taking a page from Rich's book here. I am not burned out on them. I love them still, but I want to get back to doing more story games. And so Saturday Morning Creep Show, we're going to be doing horror-themed story games on Saturday mornings. So that's pretty awesome. And then we'll continue. We have the Keeper's Dungeon World on someday, probably Sunday. I haven't quite sorted out when, in addition to occasional Powered by the Apocalypse things here and there, like more Monster Hearts and things like that. Big picture wise, I am really excited about certain things that I think are going to happen next year. It's a thing that I hope I'm going to be excited about. I hope is getting better. Increased participation from women. It is not lost on me that there are 4 of us here who are all guys talking about our experience with Gauntlet Hangouts. And I think it's getting better. We've got, Kate is starting to run games on Gauntlet Hangouts now. Maria is going to start running games. Lauren is already running games. A few other people have expressed an interest. So I think participation by women, and particularly women game runners, is going to get much, much better on Gauntlet Hangouts next year. And I'm very excited about that. I want to increase the logistical uniformity between events on the calendar, meaning they kind of all look like they're part of the same brand or whatever, like the way they're just like the nomenclatures and like the, where we put a parenthetical and that kind of thing. I'm putting together some guidelines to kind of like help smooth that process of like,
oh man, I can't wait to go after somebody for not using the style guide.
Yeah, it's a style guide.
I'm sorry, this is a 13-point font, sir.
It's not just a style guide. It's also going to have a lot of like support stuff, like at every point in the process of like, setting up your game and how to pitch it to the community and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Dealing with tech issues and whatnot.
And that can be very helpful. It's like when I'm setting up, it's like, oh man, do I send this out over Hangouts or Slack, or where should I look for the link here? Having some rules for that is very, very exciting.
Well, and honestly, like, I'm just tired of answering those questions too, like on a one-on-one basis. Like, I want just something I can point to. Is like, hey, go.
Hey, can we mention that it's your own time zone?
Yeah,
right, exactly. Right. Yeah, I'll make a note.
That has been a request we've had on all of the times I've asked. I've said, hey, we want more GMs. People have always asked, we have a FAQ, and I know we've got some great videos that Rich put together before Gauntlet Con that are useful, and putting that together in a resource guide with the kinds of materials that you've done up is going to be just dynamite.
Yeah, that's my hope. It's been so informal. We've managed to get by on this incredibly informal system for 2 years, and we just can't do that anymore. We just have to formalize it. There's no way of getting around it. So that stuff will be coming out soon. I'm really excited about more active GM support. I know this is something Lowell cares about a lot. I care about it a lot too, but I don't have the bandwidth to do it as much as I wish. So I'm really excited that Lowell is going to be doing more GM support stuff too.
If you want help, if you want a GM, contact me. I will help you. I will meet with you one-on-one. I will go to your schedule. I'll talk to you on Hangouts or whatever. I will do it. Just tell me, and I'm there to help you.
Awesome. I'm excited about increased international time slots. The Australia/Asia Pacific crowd, they are really knocking it out of the park right now. They're fucking killing it right now. A lot of their games are happening ad hoc, but they are all lining up to like put things on the calendar. And I'm very excited about that. I'm going to shake Tom until he agrees to put games on the calendar, because he runs games all the time online, but not on our calendar. We're going to try to fix that. And also, a few folks have expressed an interest in doing language-specific events. So Garrett, for example, has talked about wanting to run just a series of German language games.
Oh, wow.
He has lots of German friends that he's been like promoting the Gauntlet to, and they love the idea of running German language games on our calendar. Garrett in particular says he likes the way that our calendaring system forces him to prepare, right? And gives him gives him time to prepare, forces him to prepare. And he likes the sort of, structure of it. And so he wants to do German language stuff in that way. And I think that's great.
They got to do the Schwarztag. They have to.
I think
his friends would be really upset if they got together and they all played Das Schwarztag. I bet they get plenty of opportunities to play that in Germany. No offense to Philip, who is kicking ass on Kickstarter right now with Dark Eye, but no, I actually do want to play it because Philip Neitzel, who is on that publishing team, he makes me want to play it. So I'd actually want to check that out soon. Okay, so before we go, we're here at the end. I want to just say really quickly, I just want to give some shout outs to some of the folks who have started running games pretty regularly, who have got games on the calendar right now. We're expanding the number of game runners, which I think is so exciting. Like I said earlier, Kate, Maria, Lauren, Tyler, who we've talked about a couple times, is killing it right now. I mean, he's really, really knocking it out of the park in terms of like the variety of games and the consistency and all that stuff. I've heard nothing but great things. David Rothvetter will be running some smaller story games a little later this year and into January, like Secco Creek Vigilance Committee by Keith Stetson, which is really, really good. Shane Liebling has Tragic Tuesdays, where you can get your Bluebeard's Bride and all your other depressing games done. Donna McCarthy is running Blades in the Dark quite a bit. He's already run maybe like 10, 12 sessions of Blades in the Dark already this year. And Cold City as well. He's got that coming up. Fraser Simons, longtime active player. I game with him twice a week, at least. He's getting into GMing now more regularly on the calendar, which is awesome. Oh my God, more Dungeon World GMs. This is like manna from heaven, like more people who want to run Dungeon World. I'm so excited about this. Josh Fowler, Jeremy Scott, Josh Gary, a few other people. I no longer have to like carry all that, and David to some degree too. Like now we have more people who want to do it, and that's great. And then OSR stuff. Michael Barford, Dylan, Ross, and Andrew Shields, they all have OSR stuff planned out for next year. That's just a few of the people. Yeah. I just wanted to highlight a few people there. We got so many people who are doing stuff. And Lowell, I know you have a list of like games that are already planned for January. You want to read those off?
Oh yeah. So I was looking at the time of recording. I'm looking at the January 2018 calendar, and here is what we have right now on the calendar for that month. And there's still games coming.
Yeah, it's early. It's early. Yeah.
Lots of Dungeon World of Dungeons, John Harper's Lord Skurlock. There's Fate, One Percenter, of course, we've mentioned. Cold City, that's great to have that. Masks, Michael Barford's doing World of Dungeons Shadowrun. We've got High Plains Samurai, Breakers, Secco Vigilance Committee, Unknown Armies I mentioned, and of course we've got betas for, as you mentioned, Michael, Sea of Stars, and then also something called Crossroads Carnival. That is what a schedule! Just crazy.
That's just start too. Like I think that's probably maybe like a half to 2/3 of what will eventually be there. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's great. So exciting. So exciting. Well, I wish we had time to do Giving Me Life, but we've already been going for so long. So
agreed.
Why don't we go ahead and wrap it up, guys? Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and to talk about Gauntlet Hangouts with me.
Yeah, definitely.
Sherry keeps saying this is just for us, the golden age of RPGs, and to have this resource available compared to the wild, crazy, let's put on a game, maybe it won't go off thing that for the first 2 years before I ever joined the Gauntlet, those were the games I was getting. I would be lucky if half the sessions would happen. Getting them scheduled was insane. To have this resource is just amazing to me.
Cool. Well, that's our show. If you'd like to get in touch with us, listeners, we can be found in lots of different places. Lowell blogs at Age of Ravens. Any award-winning blog, Age of Ravens.
Right.
I feel like I have to do that, right?
The
precedent is set. If you're in our Slack group, if you're one of those folks, I know Michael can be found there and also is on G+ with me and Rich. Our community can be found in the community section of G+. Just go there and search for the Gauntlet, and you'll find us. We have a website. It's gauntlet-rpg.com. We're on Twitter at GauntletRPG, where I tweet 4 times a week, easy. And if you would like to support the Gauntlet monetarily, that's patreon.com/Gauntlet. Rich, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Michael, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
And Lowell, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
And listeners, thanks for listening. Take care.